last-ditch effort. Was that it?
It was an attempt to test if they can do that, but it is not very effective. It's not very efficient to just drop the water like that on there.
Because they had mentioned a few hours ago that this would be a high-risk operation to use helicopters to drop water onto the reactors, and yet they went ahead with it. What does that mean? What does that tell you?
They try to really measure how effective it is, and I think they failed to prove it is effective. So now they're thinking of another option. They're going to use very powerful, high-pressure fire hoses to shoot the water into the reactor building, but that is now probably under preparation.
What about boric acid? There's also been talk of pouring boric acid. Would that help at all?
Boric acid is simply to absorb the neutrons to avoid any criticality emerging, because if the fuel melts, it reaches perhaps criticality. So the boric acid is there to prevent any neutrons from creating a chain reaction, basically.
Okay. Now, we can see on those pictures there, earlier we saw smoke, what looked like smoke anyway, or steam rise above reactor number 4. What is causing that, and how big of a threat is that?
Usually when there's an explosion in these buildings, it's because of the hydrogen that is liberated when the fuel cells, the fuel rods are exposed to the steam and to air. They get to a high temperature and hydrogen is liberated. That causes that kind of explosions. Now the water vapor explosion that occurred is insidious. That could be that the actual storage pool where they put the spent fuel, that could be also burning, and the steam is coming straight out from the water in the spent fuel, because the water inside the reactor vessel is still contained within the stainless steel shell. But the water in the spent fuel, if the burning of the fuel rods is sufficiently high, then that water is turned into steam.
And all of this, of course, is very technical, Imad. Tell us in layman terms, what are the likely scenarios here? How great is the chance of a complete meltdown at Fukushima, and what would happen in that case?
It is already estimated that in plant number 1, 70% of the fuel has melted, and that in plant number 3, 30% has melted. Now, plant number 4 the reactor was empty of fuel. It was all put in the storage pool, the spent fuel pool. Now, but that storage fuel pool burned twice already, but the reactor is empty. Now, a total meltdown is the most likely will be in number 2, because there was an explosion underneath the stainless steel shell, and it could have cracked that stainless steel container from the bottom, and in that case, then all the water that is being pumped in to cool the reactor core is going to be dispersed, and that could lead to a serious complete meltdown of number 2.
Okay, thank you very much, Imad Kaduri, nuclear scientist, telling us there about the situation at Fukushima.
You're welcome.
Now, fear of radiation is causing unease in the Japanese capital, Tokyo. Despite assurances from the government, several companies are evacuating staff and many workers are fleeing the city. Aljazeera's Andrew Thomas reports.
In Tokyo, all eyes are on the television as the population wonders which way the wind will blow. Some are already leaving, fearing the arrival of dangerous levels of airborne radiation. Others are weighing up their options.
Well, they are saying that considering the scale of the leak, we don't have to worry. But there remains the question of whether they're telling us the truth. So I'm really worried.
Those who are staying in the city of 13 million people are taking precautions. They're hoarding supplies. Canned goods, noodles, batteries, bread, bottled water and face masks are selling out fast.
I haven't bought any food that will last for a long time, so I think I'd better buy some instant ramen noodles and such.
And ignoring government pleas to stay calm, people are also panic buying petrol, some waiting over 2 hours to fill their tanks.
In a city that is usually frenetic day and night, these streets are actually unusually quiet. People here tense. This metropolis, one of the world's biggest, living in a state of anxiety and fear. Andrew Thomas, Aljazeera, Tokyo.
Well, the crisis in Japan has hit the nuclear power industry worldwide as governments order safety checks. German Chancellor Angela Merkel says all 7 of the country's nuclear power plants, which began operating before 1980, will be shut down for checks. She also confirmed that France and Germany have agreed to put nuclear safety on the G20 agenda. And the European Union is calling for so-called stress tests on all 143 nuclear reactors across Europe. That's in response to what the EU energy chief describes as an apocalypse in Japan. Turning to other news now, and the commander of US and NATO forces